Now, according to the United Nations, several hundred migrants are feared dead after the boat carrying up to 700 people sank early Sunday. Italian ships and Maltese Navy and commercial vessels have all joined the rescue operation, which about 200 kilometers from the Italian island of Lampedusa. And so far, less than 50 have been rescued. According to local media reports, the migrants fell overboard when they rushed to draw attention from a passing ship. This is the latest in a series of recent incidents involving migrant boats from Libya. And just last week, a number of boats sank in the Mediterranean, leaving hundreds of dead as well.
The country's 16th local government elections on Monday, November 28. Nomination day is Friday, November 11. The local government minister Desmond McKenzie made the announcement at the Jamaica Conference Center in Kingston today, declaring that the JLP will be seeking to take over some of the councils. But the PNP president, Portia Simpson Miller, says the party will be seeking to retain all councils.
The 104th session of the UN World Tourism Organization came to a close in the Egyptian city of Luxor. Yasser Kim met David Scoswell, the president and CEO of the World Travel and Tourism Council. They spoke about the council's efforts to help Egypt revive its tourism industry, as well as the influence of Chinese tourists on the international tourism market.
Well, the agenda here is important because we brought the whole of the world's travel and tourism community to Luxor, particularly to shine the spotlight on what's happening in Egypt and the fact that tourists are not coming here at the moment. Well, as you know, the Russians, the Germans and the British particularly have stopped flying to places like Sharm el-Sheikh after the Russian airliner was downed. And a lot of security has been put in place now by the government here in Egypt to encourage people to come back. That's now in place. Egypt is safe. Now is the time for the tourists to return.
Do you have any kind of mechanism to pressure these governments or at least convince them that it's safe to return to Egypt?
Well, what we're doing now is we're talking directly to the governments, both directly and through the press, to make it very clear to them that Egypt is now safe to operate, safe to fly those airliners. And it's so important, this, because Egypt is suffering really badly. People are losing their jobs, hotels are closing, restaurants are closing. We cannot afford people to be out on the streets in Egypt. We have to support this country and fly the tourists back in.
What was their feedback? What do they need in order to be convinced that they can resume flights to Egypt?
They want to be absolutely sure that the aviation industry is safe to operate, so that the airports are secure and that there's no chance of another incident like impacting the Russian airliner that was downed out of Sharm el-Sheikh. And I think the level of security that's been put in place now by the Egyptian authorities is sufficient for those governments to allow the airlines to fly again.
It's outlasted wars and famines, colonies and civilizations. This was once the center of one of Africa's biggest and most influential empires.
My name is Abdallah Ahmad. You are welcome, Kilo Kisiwani. This is 1100 years old.
And you've been doing this for 7 years, so compared to this place, you're quite new here.
Yes.
But in 2016, Kilwa Kisiwani faces a new threat: rising sea levels that could flood these ruins. And residents like Abdullah say if that happens, he'll lose everything.
Really, I like my place and I like his Kilo. I'm feeling proud when he came in Kilo to visit the people and tell others, me, I'm from here, this is my home, and really I like my job. I don't think that I can change my job. This is very important area for our daily life, especially for the people or local people. We live with heritage site of Kilwa Kisiwani.
The United Nations says that storms and coastal flooding may soon hit the remains. We take a dhow around the islands, just as people have been doing for centuries. And it's clear how much is at risk.
In its day, Kilwa was one of the world's great cities, the centre of an empire that linked Arabia and Asia to Africa. But you can see how close it sits to the water, and if sea levels keep rising, this monument to history could be consigned to the ocean.
Hopes of conserving the island rest with the next generation, and schools are bringing children here so that they know what's at stake.
I think it's important because if you go to another place, you won't find this. So this kind of defines us.
Because you need to preserve the history. If a country doesn't have history, then it doesn't have anything. It doesn't have any important things in it, and it doesn't make people attracted to visit it.
The fight back has already begun. A local charity is planting trees and helping Tanzanians deal with changing weather patterns. But they want world leaders to do more.
You cannot say that Africa is the one who is causing all this climate change, because these big countries, they have big industries. They are producing a lot of gases. They should stop doing that. And if they are continuing to do that, they should pay us, because in somehow we are the ones affected mostly in terms of droughts, in terms of floods. At the end of 20 to 30 years to come, everything will be gone.
Other groups have constructed new walls for the ruins to provide more protection. But if sea levels keep rising, the walls won't be enough. The ocean is responsible for bringing the trade that turned Kilwa into an empire. But that same ocean may make these ruins little more than a memory. Dan Ashby, CCTV in Kilwa, Tanzania.
The African Union has asked Kenya to reconsider its decision to withdraw troops from the peacekeeping mission in South Sudan. This follows a disagreement with the United Nations. While talking to CCTV, the African Union Commission says it regrets the situation and has encouraged the UN to establish clear mandates for future engagements.
Again, Kenya withdraws from South Sudan. We'll be left with the situation that the UN is worried about. Because if the UN is worried about protection of civilians, which was the cause of this situation, then you don't make the countries that have contributed forces to run away from this situation. We don't really feel that this investigation was broad enough, was deep enough to bring out the challenges that those forces faced.
A simple press conference announcing a momentous decision. South Africa's Justice Minister said the formal process had begun for his country to leave the ICC.
Written notice to withdraw from the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court has been submitted to the Secretary General of the United Nations.
South Africa is now set to become the first nation to leave the body in 1 year's time. To understand the reasons behind this move, it's best to look at one high-profile incident last June. South Africa hosted an African Union summit. Among those attending, the Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. He's wanted by the ICC on charges of genocide and war crimes, and, under ICC rules, South Africa should have arrested him. When a domestic court also ruled Bashir shouldn't be allowed to leave the country, the Sudanese president disappeared. The South African government said it didn't know where he was, but al-Bashir turned up again in Sudan. Pretoria says arresting wanted foreign leaders like al-Bashir goes against domestic laws, giving visiting heads of state diplomatic immunity. Worse still, it would amount to regime change. For South Africa, that would be incompatible with its duties as peacemaker in African conflicts. Those duties are usually coordinated with the African Union, a body which has long been one of the most vocal critics of the International Criminal Court. Many believe South Africa's decision may have more to do with winning leverage at the African Union than with the ICC itself. The ICC was founded as the first legal body with permanent international jurisdiction to prosecute genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. In its 14-year history, it has only ever convicted Africans, like the former Congolese Vice President Jean-Pierre Bemba. Of its 10 ongoing investigations, 9 are in Africa. That's led to accusations from the African Union of racial bias. It's urged its members not to cooperate. Burundi's parliament has already voted to leave the ICC. Namibia and Kenya have also spoken of withdrawing. With one of Africa's most important nations now following suit, there are fears the ICC's reputation will be permanently damaged.